Maggie, welcome to GRIMMCon.
Hopefully that
we go.
coffee's
So
still
that's our
hot.
sound check.
Yeah, I gotta do a mic check. Yeah, no, thank you for having me. And yeah, we will have a small PG-13 warning on the talk. So, if there are any children around, earmuffs.
So what undisclosed location are you calling from? Because you look like you're in the bunker of some CIA safe house.
Oh, so you caught me. No, this is actually really funny. I actually was making this joke during the talk that you guys planned this out really well because GRIMMCon is actually on my last day here now at Oak Ridge National Lab where I'm sitting, which I think is super fitting because with this talk, it probably would have been my last day here anyways. I'm not sure how our professor would feel about me giving a talk with the word hoe in the title, but it's just you gotta roll with it.
If we have not caught your interest yet in what's about to happen in 5 minutes, stay tuned.
Yeah, please. If you're not tuning in, the word "ho" shows up in the title from Oak Ridge National Labs. That's fantastic.
So you're also our first guest to bring a little flair in the background. What is on display behind you?
Oh, so what do we got behind me? So this was, if I don't kick my computer over, this was a sensor that my team actually got the, there we go, R&D 100 for doing some high fidelity grid measurements. And then over here, we just have some fun drones that we use, another DJI drone, and then we have our video wall way in the background here. Here we go. There we go. Because we actually have we're the backup SCADA center for a few of the local utilities that we can actually project and watch some of their SCADA control stuff on our big wall here. So it's pretty fun. So yeah, this was my office. I'm relegated now to a visitor badge because now I'm just I had to hand in my official badge and gun this morning. So.
Well,
what's next?
Right?
Yeah, so this is gonna be my last last official thing I do from my office.
So what are you moving on to?
So I'm actually going over to Schneider Electric to work on their product security research team. So,
Fun.
Pretty pumped about that. They have an office over in Grenoble, France, right at the base of the Alps. So hopefully gonna get this vaccine and go meet some colleagues and do some skiing next winter.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about it. And I already ran this talk by my direct report there, so
they're good with it, huh?
Not endangering my next employment move, thank God.
This is Schneider Electric approved.
This is not representative of Schneider Electric.
Unofficially, okay.
Can we start making some high voltage jokes now?
I mean, I think that's the hoe has high voltage in there somewhere. High voltage output something thingy. Yeah.
You can really amp this up. Currently,
that's what it's all about.
What was that?
Oh man.
That's what this is all about.
Ha ha. You really
he did the amp joke, so we did amps. Oh my.
This is really turning into some dad joke.
Yeah. For those of you who are not familiar with hashtag dad jokes on Twitter, Maggie is, despite her appearances, actually a dad.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true. You know why pelicans are always optimistic?
Because it's either black or white?
Because if they weren't, they'd be pelicans.
Ah, pelican.
Wow.
And we just lost
fantastic.
the audience.
No, all right, so I got to do my favorite one on Tyler. Tyler, what is a pirate's favorite letter?
R?
R is great, but 'tis the C they love. That kills it.
These are getting really bad.
Yeah,
do you have any dad jokes, Tyler?
No.
I'm too cool for that. Look at my hair.
Oh, that's right.
I got a mohawk too, dude.
And a beard. I mean, you're one up in that. I've not been able to do that yet.
Yeah, at your age, you'll grow into it eventually.
At 90.
So one
I'm
last
actually,
question for you. No, go on, Tyler.
No, I was just gonna say I'm right over by Idaho National Labs, and I was
Oh, no.
curious what team you were on over at Oak Ridge.
So I'm in there. We just had a reimagining because of COVID. So whatever the acronym is, but it's like the Energy, Resiliency, and Security team.
Okay.
So,
I know where
yeah,
you're
I'm
at.
actually going to be interfacing with INL a bunch, so out that way.
Well, when
Wait,
you're
so-
out this way, look me up. Right down the
Yeah,
road.
yeah. I'm out that way a bunch for Yellowstone, anyways. So
Oh yeah, beautiful. It's good skiing.
Is resiliency and security two different concepts?
So yes and no. Just don't hate on our acronyms, Bryson. I don't make them up. I don't make them up.
Well,
Someone
you don't
else.
work there anymore anyway, so.
It's just, it's academia. We got to add big words.
Oh, you're academic?
Well, I mean, the lab is.
Oh, okay, but not you.
No,
They're
I'm just
purely academic. There's no kinetics based out of Oak Ridge at all.
All right, and with the, I got to give you presenter status.
that would help.
Let's get you up on the board. Again, final note for those of you with children at home, this is rated PG-13.
I think I only swear once, and I'll.
Oh, fuck that.
Yeah, fuck that. Exactly.
Well,
now it's
now it's all gone.
all gone. All right.
I come with a permanent PG-13 rating, so it's not a problem.
At minimum.
Oh,
I definitely traumatized a little girl about 1.5 years ago at B-Sides Las Vegas. They did a stand-up comedy part, and I came out and did a unicorn bit that was definitely PG-13, and I apologized to her during my bit about not all unicorns are like this. She's
bad
walking right
unicorns.
by the stage. I mean, I don't know why the parents would bring her right by the stand-up comedian stage. Like, they could have gone to the back of the room. All right,
Yeah.
Maggie, the floor is yours. Ho away.
Cool beans. All right, yeah. So for any of you guys who are just tuning in and missed some of that intro, my name is Maggie Morganti. A lot of you guys know me by Mags, and we're going to do a PG-13 talk today called "Ho the Planet, Not Your Mama's Social Engineering Talk." And so a little bit about me, I have a master's degree in intelligence studies from Mercyhurst University back in Pennsylvania. And when I was doing my degree there, I interned at FireEye on their cyber threat intelligence team. I always like to give a shout out to FireEye because they tolerated my bad jokes enough to actually stretch my internship out from what was supposed to be 3 months to 8 months. So, I always really appreciate that experience and love to give them a shout out for that. And after that internship completed, I took a full-time job a few years back at Oak Ridge National Laboratory that, let me get into a bunch of different kinds of cool research, both cyber related and not. But kind of the main thrust of what I've been working on here has been grid security research. And most recently, a super sweet colleague of mine, Megan Samford, gave me a call a few months ago back, I guess now, and basically said, hey, I got this VP position at Schneider Electric and I'm building out a team, why don't you come work with me? And that was really a position that I couldn't pass up. So I'm actually headed there now in 2021. Pretty excited about that, to work as a product security researcher for Schneider, focusing a little bit on their energy management side, pretty in line with what I've been doing. And for any of you guys that don't follow me on Twitter, I do have a Twitter account. I've included my handle there. So my DMs are generally open unless someone gives me a reason for them to not be open. So if you guys have any questions regarding this or ICS stuff, always feel free to ping me. I'm always, super happy to talk about that stuff. And then I kind of had to make this joke. I'm actually giving this talk right now. I'm not sure if you guys can see from my office here at Oak Ridge National Lab. And this is my last day at work here before I go on to work at Schneider. And I thought that was super fitting, considering this may have been my last day at work here anyways, as a Govy giving a talk with the word "ho" in the title. I'm not sure my lab director, would have loved that too much. And in addition to this being a PG-13 talk, I did want to do a disclaimer for any of you guys that read the abstract of this, that this is not sort of any, morally judgy high horse talk. We're not going to be, condemning any of the, the good floozies or fuckboys out there of the world. What we are, again, I come from a research background, going to be, studying them and observing their habits, for the purpose of looking at this from a privacy standpoint and from a social engineering standpoint, kind of as it relates to us as a community. And so any of you who look at my background can see that it's pretty heavy in the ICS operational technology space. And you may be wondering, hey Mags, what are you doing giving a social engineering talk, let alone kind of a PG-13 section for a social engineering talk? And that's a very valid question. So a few years back, I found myself in a new city at a new job, single for the first time since I owned a flip phone. And you can all make fun of me for how old that makes me. I'm aware of it. And, kind of despite all of the horrible anecdotes that I'd heard from friends about, just trash fire that is dating apps, I went ahead and, had some wine and sat down in the living room with a few of my girlfriends and got on a few of these apps thinking, oh, this is going to be so much fun. We have the lab here, we have the Smoky Mountains here, we have UT here, there should be a ton of really, wonderful people in this new town for me to meet. And by the fact that I'm giving this talk, you can probably imagine that that didn't exactly go how I envisioned it. And so I wouldn't be someone with an Intel background if I didn't give you the key takeaways of this talk first for why we're doing it. So the first one is, I think sometimes as a community, we tend to think of social engineering as a discipline that requires, a lot of formal training and courses and, even like apprenticeship sort of things, when really social engineering is just emotionally manipulating someone to get a result you want. And that's human nature. I mean, that happens all the time in the majority of interactions we have, whether it's nefarious or whether it's not. So I really wanted to just kind of raise a little bit of awareness to this, because I think sometimes we get in this siloed thinking that social engineering is just kind of a professional discipline, when really it's not. And the second is looking at this from the privacy standpoint of when people do things to try to hide their behavior, that often leads to that data being significantly less safe. And when it is, highly sensitive data, like something that could make you compromised, or sensitive pictures, if that data is not being stored in a way that is secure and safe, things that you're putting out into the world might end up in places you really don't want them to. And lastly, social engineers can be social engineered. We see it time and time again that people that do have, formal security backgrounds, whether that be in the private sector or people coming from the intelligence community with, extensive experience in this, still fall prey to it themselves. And, whether for good or for ill, we are very much kind of a whole of life community, in addition to Supply Chain Village and Car Hacking Village and all of those other great nonprofits. We have, Mental Health Village and all of the red team, blue team, deeper fits, and our own cooking shows. And this community really likes to, kind of embrace the total of our lives together to, make them better and help each other, stay more safe and stay more secure. So I thought it would be really fun to give a talk on the social engineering aspects, not of, your mom helping you break into a jail for an engagement, or, breaking into a bank, but more the actual day-to-day personal interactions that a lot of us have outside of work. And so the first one of these is realizing that your everyday people who haven't taken any of our conference trainings, who haven't gone through the intelligence community, can still be really, and I mean scarily good at this. You don't have to pay $3,700 at, your local hacking conference to learn how to social engineer. I mean, there are, layman people walking around who are just absolutely excellent at this. So, not kind of getting into that mindset of, oh, this is just an everyday person, they probably aren't, doing anything deceitful. And one of my really sweet girlfriends likes to refer to people that, you know, kind of have this sort of behavior as Tinder lizards. And I picked that up. It's not my original content, but I just thought it was hilarious and kind of had a nice snap to it. And, you know, really helps kind of visualize, you know, this kind of like scaly, slimy behavior that we, you know, kind of typically associate with that like caricature of a person's behavior. So I made a fun animal profile for, you know, this for the sake of the presentation. And I think the piece to really pull out here is that these people who, you know, you may find out down the road are, you know, actually fairly deceitful, probably aren't going to come across that way to you at first. I mean, if they did, this wouldn't be social engineering. If you could spot a slime ball from a mile away, you'd never fall for it. So a lot of times this behavior is wrapped in very, you know, kind of innocent, innocuous other behaviors that, you know, lead you to, you know, have trust in someone and not suspect certain things. So the way that we're going to go about doing this, and this is the part of this that may or may not get me in trouble, but it's fine, is I thought a really fun way to present this would essentially be doing an exercise where essentially I'm going to role play, you know, your typical skeevy Tinder lizard and walk through some of these behaviors that they use, kind of especially in the digital sphere, and ways that would affect us from an infosec standpoint, and look at some of the problems that, you know, I would run into if I was this kind of person, and some of the really creative solutions, you know, that I, a researcher, have found, you know, either in personal experience or from friends' anecdotes or Reddit or podcast anecdotes, of kind of people, things that people have found partners were doing that, you know, we would be mad about it if it wasn't just like so damn creative. So we're going to go through some of this together, and, you know, instead of kind of pointing the finger to like, you know, this is how they would do that, you know, do it in a very judgy way, I thought it would be really fun to actually assume that role and walk you guys through some of this. So for the next probably about 10 minutes, I'm going to be role playing Liz the Tinder Lizard as your guide through how a, you know, kind of skeevy Tinder lizard would use kind of the digital tech at their disposal and social engineering tactics to kind of get away with some things that we wouldn't traditionally, you know, want to see in behavior. So the beginning of our journey, you know, just to kind of set the stage, for the purpose of this, my character is going to be Liz the Tinder Lizard. And, you know, I'm a, you know, 20-something-year-old girl who, you know, has 2 or 3 guys that aren't aware of each other that I'm talking to. And, you know, I still kind of want to play the field a little bit. I'm not quite ready to give that up. So I would still like to be on these dating apps kind of without any of those men who also aren't aware of each other knowing. So there's a few ways that I can do this. The first is going to be constantly deleting the app so that if I'm sitting here scrolling through my phone, you don't see thumbnails for Bumble, Hinge, Tinder, or any of the other million of these that there are. But that's pretty thin as far as, you know, kind of a Tinder lizard TTP, because, you know, people have friends that are on these apps, and, you know, if my profile card or whatever is still coming up in a geographical area that, you know, that person has friends in, they're going to say, hey, you know, so-and-so is still on these apps, you know, I thought you guys were hanging out. So that's a pretty thin rookie way to go about this. The second one is going to be, you know, kind of your traditional cliche hoes in different area codes. So say I, you know that I have family that's about, you know, an hour or 2 away, or that I travel across the country for business a bunch. A lot of these apps will allow you to set your location in a different spot. We saw this, that people were using it to actually collect intel during the initial COVID outbreaks. But, you know, if I'm going to be skeevy, you know, maybe I'm going to set my location for somewhere that, you know, the people that I'm hanging out with wouldn't be matching with me, because as far as this app is concerned, you know, I'm not in Knoxville, Tennessee. I may be, you know, in Atlanta or Seattle or somewhere else. But again, you know, the geographic constraints of that, you know, the logistics are not convenient, you know, then I actually have to go to these places to meet those people. So then we have, you know, kind of true experts, you know, people like Nathan here with the, you know, the duck and the taco mask to kind of mask your identity. Or some of the other really fun things that I could do are adjusting what I tell the app that I want to be matched with. So say I, by current kind of flock consists of, men that are generally, 23 to 28, and, they might all be short, and they may be, not particularly religious and very politically progressive. And I've matched with them because the app determined that that's both what we both want, and it showed us each other. But if I all of a sudden tell the app, hey, I think I want some diversity in my life. I really want, a tall, over 45, very religious, very Republican, kind of QAnon sort of figure. While that may or may not actually be what I want, all of a sudden, if my parameters change for what the app thinks I want to be matched with, everyone that I've previously matched with kind of won't be able to see me anymore in their card deck if I unmatch from them, because the algorithms won't think that we're going to, be a good fit. And then once I find someone that I would like to talk to, then we have a whole other set of problems that I actually have to talk to them in a way that's not, suspicious to any other person that I'm talking to that may or may not be shoulder surfing me. And, we can't talk about this without just raising a glass to, the wonderful David Petraeus, who really just brought all of this, kind of crashing into the DoD space with his very public affair with his biographer, which we'll get into in a second. So the kind of very common, lizard TTP that happens is the duplicate friend. So say I have a very sweet friend here in Knoxville, Caitlin Grace. Most phones will allow you to have two people with the same name in your phone. So the really easy thing to do is say I'm hanging out with Johnny, but I know that Jimmy may be texting me. I'm just going to change Jimmy's name in my phone to Caitlin Grace. And that way, when I have a notification that comes up on my phone, if someone sees it, it just looks like my friend is texting. But this is going to get really, really weird if a thumbnail pops up for my best friend with a, picture of junk. That's going to raise some questions that I really don't want to have to explain. So the next one is, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the Petraeus, is the iCloud shopping list. So Apple actually has a really super interesting feature that allows you to share collaborative notes. And this is a really cool feature for other applications. But what you could theoretically do is start a shopping list. And, it'll have grocery list. The first kind of few lines that would be previewed on your note would be, batteries, cheese, bread, wine, and then after that you can just carry on a conversation with whoever you have as another collaborator on the note. And anyone kind of scrolling through your phone, unless they have questions about why you have a collaborative grocery list, it's going to look fairly normal. But again, if someone actually opens that, all of a sudden it's going to look really weird, some of the things you have added to your grocery list. And that kind of brings us to the David Petraeus, which if any of you are, I'm assuming most of you are familiar with this. He and his biographer, who he was having an affair with, basically were communicating exclusively through Gmail drafts. So they had a common email account. One of them would go in, write an email draft, save it. The other one would log in, read it, delete it, make a new draft, save it, and this is how they were communicating without actually having to send anything back and forth. But again, if anyone ever logs into that email, it's going to be pretty obvious what that email is for. So probably not ideal. And then, you have kind of the general, people have WhatsApp or other, messaging platforms that if they have family in other countries, it kind of, goes back to the whole like duplicate friend, oh, that's no one, that's, my cousin who lives in, Germany or France or wherever. And it's that sort of thing. But the super, super creative one that I'm still not entirely sure the application of this and why Samsung does this. But for any of you that have a Samsung phone, which I'm hoping is none of you for security reasons, Samsung doesn't actually allow you to block people. Samsung, if you go in and block someone, it will, without ever indicating to them that you blocked them, it'll just neatly send any messages that they send you into this blocked messages folder that's like 4 clicks off of your general SMS inbox. And so what I could theoretically do is, you know, if I am hanging out with Johnny and I know Jimmy might be texting me, is I'll just block Jimmy for that period of time. And any texts that Jimmy sends me are never going to show up in my phone, are never going to show up in my inbox. My phone's never going to light up, ping, nothing. But then after a period of time when I either, you know, get back to my car or get back home, you can reopen that folder, unblock them, and no one is any the wiser. I have no idea why Samsung has this as a feature. If any of you guys know, I'd be super interested to know. But that is a way that, you know, to break character for a second, something that one of my really sweet girlfriends ran into and made me aware of that I just thought was super, super fascinating. And of course, no talk that deals with privacy, InfoSec, romantic relationships would be complete if we didn't reference nudes. And this is super where privacy becomes really, really relevant here regarding where any sensitive data of your bits ends up. So the kind of first place that people tend to hide these things are these like vault apps that either just look like a vault app, or I've seen them disguised as like solitaire apps. And, you know, anyone that has something like this on their phone, it's going to raise questions about, you know, why do you have this on your phone? It's going to look kind of suspicious. So it's actually not a great place to hide something if I'm actually trying to be, you know, kind of a shady, skeevy Tinder lizard. So the next place that people go is the trash cans. You know, you delete something out, but you leave it in the trash. Again, probably not the best place. You know, if someone's going to ask to go through your phone, they're probably going to look there. So, you know, I, as an advanced skeevy Tinder lizard, just know better than to hide something there. The next one, which is, you know, kind of a level up if you really want to become, you know, just kind of a more sophisticated Tinder lizard, is the strategic crop. So OS agnostic apps like Adobe Lightroom will let you do something really interesting with your photos, where say you have a picture of something, we'll keep this PG-13 and not R. Say you have a picture of something and there happens to be a vase or a lamp in the background. What you can actually do with that picture is crop it to just be the vase or the lamp. And when you scroll through your camera roll, it'll just look like the vase or the lamp. But if I want to see that picture again, I can go into Adobe Lightroom, hit crop, and revert the entire thing back to the original. So someone would have to know what they were looking for to even think that the picture of, you know, the vase, the lamp, the flowers, whatever, were maybe not, you know, kind of not what they appeared at first pass. And then the last one, I actually found, because part of this talk I crowdsourced from some guys that I used to be really good friends with in high school. You know, they're old friends of mine that, you know, have made some poor choices in life that I was aware of. And, you know, I just generally asked them, I said, you know, how did you get away with this? Like, what were some of the tactics that you used? Because I would like to give a talk on this and steal your creativity for my own purposes. And this I just thought was ridiculous. That one of the guys used to print pictures as PDFs in his phone to his internal storage voicemail folder. Because I cannot find the Discord chat link, please help. Okay. I don't know if Bryson can get on that. Okay. Yeah, so he would take girls' nudes and he would store them as a PDF file in his voicemail folder, because your voicemail can't pull over a PDF. So someone would actually have to know to go into the internal storage of your phone and try to look at your raw voicemail files. So that one, and like, again, you know, this friend, a high school friend that did this, was not like even a college educated person at all. I mean, he's a blue collar forklift operator and, you know, has no, you know, kind of formal background in tech. And, you know, these kind of like just wild creative things that people are figuring out how to do are really interesting. And again, from a privacy standpoint, you know, if you're in a committed relationship with someone and you are kind of sharing those sort of intimate pictures, And I'm not the person that's done any of the work on this. Again, this is a lot of work that's been done by people that are, much more in the privacy sphere than me, but you would hope that those pictures are being stored in a much more kind of secure fashion rather than just in, kind of raw form in some random internal storage file where they could be accessed without any sort of password or extra security measures. And then, of course, the bane of every pesky Tinder lizard's example, or of every pesky Tinder lizard's life, is your pesky notifications. So if I have my phone sitting up on the table and it's blowing up with notifications that are suspicious, like that's not a good thing. That's how you kind of get had as a pesky Tinder lizard. So how do you get around this? The most rookie one is obviously going to be the airplane mode. So this is, your phone is, in airplane mode so that no notifications can come through. But to anyone who's looking at your phone, that's going to look really suspicious. We're not on a plane, we're at a brewery. Why is your phone on airplane mode? So then the next one is obviously going to be, kind of the secret incognito locked messaging app. But as with the photo vaults, it's going to look weird if I have that because, why do I have that on my phone? What do you have to hide? So that's generally something that's going to raise suspicion if I'm, kind of being this skeevy person. So kind of the next step that, we do is, either muting the contact so that none of their things come through. So, if I have Signal and I decide that, I just don't really want to hear any notifications from Johnny while I'm out with Jimmy, I'm just gonna mute Johnny's contact in Signal, SMS, whatever. But that doesn't prevent me from when I open up the app, still seeing the the notification or the message. This also goes to deleting the app, which you can do, but if you're constantly re-downloading, deleting the app, it's gonna look strange. So again, this one I actually come back to the Samsung soft block that no notifications ever come through because the message never comes through, which again, if any of you guys have any idea why Samsung has that on their phone, I don't know, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that because I just think it's super interesting. And so one thing that I learned when I was in Miami last year at the S4 conference is that even the best lizards fall. Even, the best, strongest iguanas, when the cold front moves in, even they will fall from the trees. So we've kind of gone through some of the different ways that Liz the Tinder lizard may manipulate her phone, manipulate the apps on it to make it look like she's this innocent pliant lamb who has nothing to hide. But if there's something to hide, there's always a way to find it. So location services. If you stay matched with someone that you have met on a dating app, generally those apps will show you how far away the person is. So if someone tells you that they are at work and that they work roughly 15 miles away from you, and you can check that on a map with GPS, but their app says that they are 3 miles away from you, that probably suggests that they're not exactly telling the truth. This was the one the one kind of personal one for me, which I can't super get into because of the lab, but essentially, if you had someone who, from a national security aspect, was transporting something that was sensitive, and they left location services on their phone, and you as a person who had had a beer with them knew what they did for a living, it would be super problematic that you could theoretically, based on a Tinder or a Bumble X miles away from you, track that material because they were dumb enough to leave their location services on. So again, from a national security privacy perspective, this has consequences that reach pretty far beyond just someone's feelings getting hurt. Suddenly someone that they actually haven't verified themselves as being trustworthy can track national security stuff. And that's kind of the length that I can go about that in detail. one of the really funny ones that I've seen, again based on the location services, is if someone feels that their significant other is using tactic number 2 about setting their location somewhere else that they go on business, you can play that against them. So say you were dating someone that traveled to San Francisco a lot, and you kind of had a feeling that, you know, maybe when they go out of town, they're using Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, whatever. Next time they go out of town, just make your own account. You can make it you can make it look like a honeypot, and just set it for San Francisco and swipe through your matches and, you know, see if the person comes up. Again, this is super creepy and invasive, but, you know, if you are invested in finding out, like, there are ways to do this. And this one's my personal favorite. I like to call this one the phone is lava. And so, like, if at any given time someone has suspicions, you know, really all you have to do to check that is reach for the person's phone. And if they look like they just saw a ghost, you probably have some reason to worry about, you know, kind of suspicious stuff going around, you know, kind of in that person's general tech device. This one, someone capped as the dominoes, and I actually found this on one of my favorite podcasts that I listen to. It's called Call Her Daddy, which is extra not PG-13. It's like way beyond R, but it's hilarious. And there was this girl that wrote in that basically thought her significant other was not at work at night when he said he was. And she wanted to, and this I just thought was brilliant from a social engineering perspective. And she wanted to check this, but she didn't want to seem like, you know, she was, you know, psycho. So she ordered DoorDash pizza to his work, and DoorDash lets you track the driver. So, you know, you can call them and be like, hey, babe, like, you're outside of, or they're outside of your work. Like, where are you? I got you pizza delivered. You're working late. You know, and if all of a sudden that driver has no one to meet, that's probably a pretty big tell, which I thought was just absolutely hysterical. And really all of this to say that, you know, for as much as there are skeevy Tinder lizard TTPs that people use, women especially, I feel like, at least, you know, kind of the women that I've come in contact with, are like borderline FBI. And there are, you know, for as much as there are creative non-tech social engineers on kind of the skeevy Tinder lizard side, there are some also really super creative people who come up with ways to, you know, kind of alarm trip on this, who are also not technically, you know, kind of formally trained at all either. And I just think it's super interesting for us as a community to realize that, you know, kind of outside the sphere of InfoSec and outside the sphere of doing physical pen testing, you know, whether we realize it or not, we are surrounded by people who in just their personal everyday interactions are actually doing some pretty impressive social engineering back and forth with each other, you know, that haven't really received any training on how to do this, you know, haven't been to our conferences, don't do this professionally, and, you know, are actually scary, scary good at it. And so, again, closing statements. Just a reminder that really all manipulation to achieve an end result is social engineering. This isn't something that we have any kind of monopoly on. The general population is way better at this than I think we give them credit for, especially when the urge to reproduce is involved. And also that, you know, bring your own device policies. This affects because there may be different workarounds that people do with their devices. There may be things stored on those devices that are attached to your corporate networks that you might not want stored on those devices attached to your corporate networks. And, you know, also the privacy implications of where people hide things when they're trying to be deceitful that just do not in any way, shape, or form lend themselves to privacy. And that is my talk. I don't have a work email to give you guys because I am in between. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, you can reach me on Twitter. And thank you for Grimm for having this.
So that was a different talk.
Yeah.
I want to point out in advance to return the favor from your participation from several times in the past. There is a picture with your eyes closed out on Twitter now during your talk.
I hate you. I hate you so much. That's not even cool. I'd forgotten all about that.
Well, now you've been reminded, and you're welcome.
Is this the entire reason my talk was accepted?
So that I could set you up for this?
Yeah,
I'm not that smart of a social engineer.
that's just disappointing.
Bryson's revenge goes far and wide.
Yes, he has a long memory.
Uh,
And there's a
that was a good
coterie of
talk.
folks who are in on that, so I'm also going to get them at some point in the future too.
So are you going to be like an elephant now, not a unicorn, because you have a long memory? Is that like a thing?
I think unicorns, besides having access to an infinite bag of holding, because how else could we carry anything? We also can put memories there.
I love whoever Wild West is. The phone is lava works great with my teenage daughter. Yeah. So I actually had very smart before their time parents who, when I was, 15 or 16 or however old I was when I got my first cell phone, every day when I got home from school at 5 o'clock, my dad took away my cell phone and locked it. And he said, nothing good happens on a teenage girl's cell phone after dinner.
That's a smart man.
Yeah.
After dinner, that's the corollary to the nothing good happens at 2 a.m. conversation too.
Yeah.
That's
So-
awesome. Now that was a really good talk. There's some interesting. There's always interesting implications when you talk about bring your own device from an enterprise standpoint, but the general population is very, very creative, and we've lost the insight that we're technologically smart and we think we can lock these phones down. The general population is like a bunch of teenage daughters. They will find a way to make whatever they're trying to do happen on their phone.
No, and I think it's super interesting because, both myself and a few of my really close girlfriends, kind of had interactions with people that were not ideal, but like, a few months removed from it happening, I was like, I almost like can't even be mad about that because like that was impressive the way you did that. I would have not thought to try to hide something there. Like that's pretty creative. Like I almost have to just give you props for it.
Yeah, again, like teenage daughters, there's always a way.
Yeah, I'm fortunate or unfortunate enough, depending on who you're talking to not have children yet. So my dog doesn't give me these sorts of headaches.
Surprised Ansel doesn't have a Twitter social media account.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he gets so much spotlight on mine on his own that I worry that it'll go to his head and he'll get like doggy ego if all of a sudden he like. Well, and also for my ego's sake, like I don't know if I could handle it if my dog's social media had more followers than me.
You only laugh, but it's probably serious.
Yeah, I don't want to have to admit that. Like I don't want to have to look at my dog and be like, you're more popular to my colleagues, but I am. Like maybe you should just give this talk.
Well, besides the threat to your ego from your dog, the continuation of these kinds of behaviors, which can range from, I like that you added the levels, from the innocuous to the level 9,000 creep. What is your prediction for the threat landscape in 2021?
In ICS specific, in general.
Your call.
Oh man, okay.
Choose your own adventure.
Choose
After
your
that
own
talk, I don't know.
Yeah. Only I'm not giving you options.
No, I mean, from what we personally are going to be dealing with, I think there's going to be a lot of knee jerk to solar winds that's going to distract from other things that are happening, at least for, kind of Q1 2021. I think everyone's going to be pretty wrapped around the axle about sunburst. And I worry that that's going to make people miss other things that are kind of going on under their nose. That's kind of a big concern of mine. John Strand and all them did an awesome podcast that I totally agree with, where they basically talking about this is going to set patching back by 5 years. We're already seeing that about people kind of pointing their fingers and saying, "Ha, I told you so. We shouldn't patch. Look at what happened to them." And one of the things they brought up during that webcast that I understand, but I'm not necessarily sure I agree with, was Jonathan from Rendition Sec said that he thought that he was essentially comparing corporate leadership to anti-vaxxers, that they were they were going to be, he was essentially making the point of not patching because of solar winds is equivalent to not taking the vaccine because of side effects, which I can see his line of thinking there, but I would reframe it that this was an intentional act. This wasn't like a side effect of like an ICS. We see that sometimes applying a patch has an unintended consequence, and it's a thing. But I think that this is much more akin to, we caught someone trying to poison a batch of vaccines, and now, your CISOs and, other people on your security team are a little apprehensive about, taking that vaccine, because if they tried to poison one batch, like they're probably doing that with other stuff. And, that's a concern. And I think that we need to be sympathetic about that. And maybe be a little kinder to them than anti-vaxxer labels. But yeah, no, I mean, I think threat landscape 2021 is going to be, a lot of the same stuff that we're seeing now already, and then a lot more, kind of continuation on from the sunburst stuff. I think that now that we know before and it's already been popped, we're going to find more of it, because like this wasn't their only poker in the fire. And that's that's not high side intel. So
I know one large company personally, and a couple of other ones that are not as bad, but they were like, yeah, this wasn't a problem. We hadn't patched it in 2 years.
Oh. Which so like, kept making like hee ha-has on Twitter about it, about like, oh, we haven't patched, and I'm like, that's like saying
you don't have any IOCs for it, so you're just compromised in general.
Well, and if it's not patched, it's like making fun of people that like have a vulnerability in a smart door lock because you never lock your door. Like that's like, we patched for a reason, guys. Like there's probably a hole in if you haven't patched. Like maybe now's not the time to get super like morally on your high horse about that.
Well, not to extend this because we don't have too much more time, but I read an interesting article. It was a research study, I want to say it was about a year ago, and they were talking about that patching overall actually introduces more vulnerabilities in the long term on average.
Be interested.
Yeah, I of course, because it's a bit of a controversial statement and it's counterintuitive. But the simple premise that they kind of pointed to is that increased code complexity typically leads to increased surface area and increased problems. At the end of the day, they're fixing known issues, but it turns out developers inherently introduce new issues anytime they put bits to the screen to commit. They went through it looking across a range of things, and it was interesting because it was I'm always a fan of anything that is empirically driven in our industry, because we get a lot of opinions. We get a lot of, well, I did this in my garage and therefore look what it could be. We don't get a lot of, this is an industry-wide study anchored in data that is statistically relevant.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, kind of to that point, I think that, to be sane and successful in this space, like you have to embrace the nature of the whack-a-mole. Like,
and the lizard.
Yeah.
That's that tenacity that brought us to this industry. I think it's a required characteristic because of that very nature.
Yeah,
well, Max, thank you for mixing up and keeping people awake in the middle of the day with a spicy take.
Well, it's the first non-ICS talk I've given, so I had to make sure that it would stick in people's memories.
2020 out with a bang.
Yeah.
Well, and like, I mean, honestly, if it's GRIMMCon, like GRIMMCon, I mean, nothing I can say could possibly be more ridiculous than whatever Bryson's wearing. So I mean, that's the freedom of that is just always
That's a
All
good
right,
point.
so you're done. Thank you.
See ya.